Hi, I'm Chris McKenna, and this is Exam Debug. So today we're going to be doing our third class on components of computers for IGCSE ICT. And today we're going to be concentrating specifically on the output devices that you have to know. Okay, so in case you've forgotten, an output device is a device, for example, a monitor, printer, speaker, and it allows us to take data out of this system and put it into some kind of usable format. For example, pictures and light, or a physical copy in some way, or perhaps sound. So it takes data out of the system. So the first one we're going to be looking at, or the first set we're going to be looking at, are our monitors. So we've got two main types of monitor. The first one is a Tft monitor. So a Tft monitor is probably what most people are used to these days. These are the sort of flat screen ones as opposed to the bulky ones. So these are really lightweight compared to these. They take less power and they emit less radiation. So that's the good stuff. On the downside, they're not great for angles. So you'll notice, try this out with people, but try and look at an LCD screen, or sorry, a Tft monitor from an angle, and you'll see maybe the colors dissipate. Although, it has to be said, these things are getting much better in quality, so that's maybe this is beginning to become not such a big thing, but for now, go with it. So they're not so good at angles, and they use a lower color set than these. So these ones have a wider range of colors than these do. Again, there's some very expensive versions of these that have, good things going on as well. The alternative, though, for these kinds is a Crt monitor. So CRT is a cathode ray tube, and this has guns that shoots onto the surface here, and these have high quality images and good angular viewing, but they're very heavy, bulky, they consume lots of power, and they can flicker. So nowadays it's very, very uncommon to see these, apart from if someone has an old system. But there is a possibility that in sort of CAD, computer-aided design, people will still use this because they want the higher quality, and maybe they're going to have groups looking from different angles at the screen, working together to make something. The other thing you need to add here perhaps is that these ones work with light pens. So light pens are kind of like touch screens that you can interact with the screen using a light pen. Again, they're quite uncommon these days unless you're in a very specific industry that still uses them. Okay, the next ones we have to look at are printers. So there are three types of printer that we have to be able to compare. The first of these ones is probably the one you're very familiar with, is a inkjet printer. So these sort of literally shoot ink onto pieces of paper. They're very high quality, they're cheap, and they're quite small or compact. Really useful for in the home. So if you're not printing often, or if you're printing single copies of things, then inkjets are perfect. But they're slow to print, and the ink runs out quite often. So we have one of these at the school, and in the lab, and we have to constantly keep updating refilling the ink to make sure that it's ready to go. Another alternative is the laser printer. So laser printers are really good if you have, for example, if you're in a company that's going to be printing many copies of the same thing, so like industrial printing sort of thing. So they're good for large volumes, and they have very good quality, and it's consistent quality. So with the inkjet, when you print it out, you're getting a good quality picture, but try printing 700 on this, and you see as the ink gets lower, as the, depending on the quality of the printer, but you can get more and more problems with the ink running in places, and you have to clean the head and the nozzle, stuff like this. Whereas with a laser printer, it's consistently high quality, which means in terms of printing lots of things, it's quite cost effective compared to an inkjet. So if you are printing thousands of copies, then a laser printer is probably going to be cheaper than using an inkjet. On the downside, they're very expensive to buy, and when you need to update the parts inside, you need I think, like we've got one at the school, and I think it needs a new cartridge of some kind. And so this is very expensive for the school to buy, so we haven't actually bought a new one in ages, because we don't really do much bulk printing in the labs. But maybe in the school office where they're printing out many letters for parents that have the same information, a laser printer would be much better. Okay, and again, only fast at doing multi-copy. So you can't, this is one of the important things of IGCSE, is you've got to be specific. So you can't just say laser printers are faster than inkjet printers. That's not going to get you the points. What you have to say is a laser printer is faster if doing multiple copies of the same document. Yeah, so be careful with things like this on your test. And the last one, environment issues. So I don't know how true this is today, but it's certainly a consideration, is that these can put, laser printers can put some harmful ozone effects into the air around your office, and so they can be a health and safety issue. Again, we'll come into this more during the health and safety one, as with the other one, but it's just something to be aware of, that they can cause health and safety problems for you. Okay. Oh, sorry, did I say 3 printers? Okay, we've got 4 types of printer. Sorry, I forgot one. So this one here is a dot matrix printer. So dot matrix printers were the standard for a long time. This was what everybody used to use ages and ages ago, before inkjet became cheap and lasers became available. People used this dot matrix printer, but they still do today. So near me there's a mini market, and they print all of their stock things on this kind of paper as well. So they're not gone, they've just become more specialist, and we'll see why. So a dot matrix printer is good for use with continuous paper. So the good thing about this is, as you can see here, it's not A4 paper that it uses, but a continuous stack. So you can feed in a paper from a box, and it will keep going and keep going and keep going. So you don't have to keep coming back and looking at it to see what's going on. It's just can print out continuous sheets, which can be more effective than having things on separate pages. It can work in dusty and moist areas. So this is quite a robust little printer. It's kind of sturdy. It can do the job even in say, like a stock room where maybe there's lots of things moving about, there's lots of dust. A dot matrix is a good printer because it's not going to, like an inkjet's going to get all that dust inside it, it's going to get clogged, you're going to have to keep cleaning it. So a dot matrix might be better in that situation. And if you're just looking to print out like stock information, these are really cheap to run and maintain, although they are getting more expensive to buy because they're not as common anymore, which is one of the funny things. The less common something becomes, the more expensive it is to buy. Downsides. Okay, so it's not good quality. If you've seen this, it's using little dots to print out what's going on. And while this is very readable and it's clear, it's not nice, pretty inkjet or laser printer quality. They're noisy, so they do make a lot of noise. If you've ever heard this, it's like so you don't want to be in the same room working with one of these if you also have to concentrate on other tasks. So again, in a stock room, it's noisy anyway, there's lots of stuff going on, doesn't make a big difference. And, oops, sorry, so more expensive than an inkjet. So, yeah, sorry, maybe I have to roll back on what I was saying. So, yeah, they're cheap to run and maintain, but, like I was saying, because they're not as easy to find anymore, they're more expensive than buying an inkjet. So, maintenance is cheap, but buying it in the first place is more expensive. Sorry, I hope I didn't confuse you there by saying the wrong thing. Okay, and our last one is this big thing here. This is really big. Is a plotter, or a graphics plotter. So these are for making things like posters or big banners or, you know, like really big printing jobs. So if you wanted to do a big advertisement outside of your school, you would use a plotter to do it, usually. So, and these can make really big printouts, and they're very high quality. Downsides is they're expensive, of course, to buy, maintain, if you want to keep up the quality, and they're slow. So these are not, this is maybe why I said 3, so these 1, 2, 3, these go together. Whereas this one is a specialist printer in itself. It doesn't really compare to the other ones per se. It's for a specialist job of doing the big printouts. Alright, so let's move on. Oh dear, sorry, I'm having a really bad memory day today. I'm a little bit sick. I don't know if you can hear, my throat's a bit clogged up, so sorry if it's hard to hear me. So the last printer, yeah, sorry, I forgot. So the last printer is a 3D inkjet printer. So these are obviously a modern invention, and instead of just printing on paper, what we can do is print 3D models or 3D artifacts, 3D items using this printer. And so it's these are really worth investigating and finding out about, because it's they may ask you about these kind of things in the exam, because they're doing since 2016 they're doing an additional part on effects of modern technology, so I think 3D printing is one of them. So these are very good, but you need to have a look at what they can actually do. So, you know, a lot of the things that you will see that, you know, oh, this was made in a 3D printer was done using a very expensive, cutting edge, top of the line 3D printer, whereas for most, say, schools or homes, you're going to have a very simple 3D printer with very limited abilities. Maybe only a single type, or maybe only a few different types of resin can be used in it to make those parts. It might be quite brittle. So have a look at different 3D printers. It's not as simple as just, it's not as simple as I have a 3D printer, I can then print anything that requires 3D printing. You know, you need to have the correct size of printer, you need to have the correct resins available, or multiple resins in some cases. So it's an interesting field to look into in more detail. However, in general, 3D inkjet printer can save money making prototypes. So rather than having to make things by hand or having to go through different things, you can very quickly make some simple prototypes in here, rather than maybe paying for something to get made somewhere else and then finding out you've made a small mistake. You can do this in here. And you can make products with working parts, so that's one of the interesting ones. If you have a look, I mean, I think that the famous one is the gun that was made using a 3D printer. So you can make working parts into here. They are expensive, at least at the moment. Hopefully in the future they'll start to come up with more affordable ones. They're slow and they take a long time to make these things. And as I was saying, the quality varies. So the more you spend on your 3D printer, maybe the better your prototype, your object, is going to be when you finish, or the more possibilities there are with your object. Okay, so this is a whole area in itself that you maybe need to go and look into and explore and read up on news stories, because it's quite a cutting edge area. Okay, now no more printers, no more printers, no more printers. Yay! Okay, so other output devices to finish off today is our speakers, which I think you know already, hopefully, for making sound. Projectors, they're kind of similar to monitors, but you can display it on a large area or on a wall. Probably you're familiar with these from your classroom. Now, the other ones down here, we're going to go into more detail in our sensors and microprocessor controlled one, but we could also have motors, LEDs, and buzzers. So these are more like electronic devices that we can also manipulate using our computer, where we can output signals from. So these work with something called an actuator. So actuator is the part that's going to turn on or move or send the signal to result in some sort of physical movement, for these ones anyway. Okay, so I think that's us for our main system design. But the same as last time, before you go, I want you to think about which output device, I got this right this time, last time I put what, but which output device would you use in the following situations and why? So in a classroom, what would be the most appropriate output device? Again, you can come up with several, there's not just one answer. You can for a ICT classroom, or for a computing lab, or a classroom, or a physics class, what output devices would be best? For electronic funds transfer point of sale? Oops, sorry. So we mentioned this last time. Hopefully you can remember what this means, otherwise you may need to go and investigate. I'm not going to tell you. And for a busy office. So which output devices would you recommend if you were the systems designer, and why? And you can post your answers in the comments, or you can discuss in your class. So just a reminder, the same as with input devices, you need to know what they look like, how they are used, the advantages and disadvantages, and suitable situations in when to use them. So you've got to be able to work out, given a scenario, which devices would be most appropriate and why, be able to compare them. A common question in the exam might be, Tom works in a library and he has to take charge of books and borrowers. What input and what output devices would he use and why? Okay, and you'd have to compare and discuss. Alright, so hopefully that helped. As you'll see, there's a lot less of these output devices than there are input devices. So we've got really just monitors, printers, and then a few, projectors could possibly be in the monitor one, but and then we'll get a few other little ones, but it's a much less heavy area. So I hope that helped. If you have any questions, please let me know. You can post in the comments. Please subscribe. Apologies for my cold and my disorderly conduct this time. But thanks very much, and good luck with your exams.